Good morning, afternoon, everybody. We are getting started here. We're toasting. Do not adjust your TV set. This is real. This is a real background.
This is actually a real fireside chat.
This is actually a real fireside chat. It's great. We learned something interesting about this room that we're in today, actually. This is the room that Prince here live streamed from the GQ Awards. I don't know if I wanted to like stay in here or leave. I don't know.
We are in Santa Barbara.
Yes, we're headquartered. Yes, absolutely. We're going to let folks get settled in. I hope everyone is having a great week. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get folks settled in, having maybe ending your lunch period or getting ready to take lunch. We're going to be getting you ready, getting you in the mindset for lunch. I am hungry as well, actually. I am hungry. Well, good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're really excited to be here. My name's Ellis Talton. I've got Briq CEO and co-founder Bassem Hamdy with us. Bassem, thanks for joining with the glasses. Well, we're really excited that y'all joined us today. Really important topic. We're going to cover the future of work. And if you've been watching the Future of Work series that we've produced over the last several months,
it's getting an amazing pickup. Which thank you for everybody that's watched it, commented, and shared it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
100%. Really appreciate the support on that. And hopefully folks found that interesting. And I think we've gotten great feedback on it, and certainly we'll do it again in the future. But today, the goal is to kind of recap that and really like what and we've talked to a lot of folks that have listened to it and asked questions. We're going to talk through some of those things.
Sure.
And really, we're getting towards the end of the year here, the calendar year, and, thinking about what is 2024 going to look like.
Yeah. I think 24 is a massive generational shift year. I think a lot of things happened. I feel like we're at the end of a cycle and the beginning of another one. It really feels like we're in a new epoch.
100%, especially, we've heard AI being talked a lot about, how fast that has emerged on the scene. Keep in mind, this chat GPT we've all heard about, barely a year old in the at least in the broad market here, right? So things could change quickly. We're going to
get away from it, right?
But you can't work without it. So we're gonna cover all of that today and more. Just a couple housekeeping things here. This is being recorded, so there's questions there for you, and we'll have some polls as well.
Yeah.
So Bassem, recap on the future of work. What have you heard? What's the feedback you've gotten from folks around this?
I think the big question everybody's having is, what does a successful construction company look like in 2024? And why is that any different than 23?
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about it being kind of at the end of a generational shift, we always talk about these digital transformation waves. And we talk about how, I always start off with the Autodesk story about how they took hand-drawn drawings and digitize those on the PC. And then eventually those got shipped. There was a whole business that a whole printing business that basically doesn't exist anymore. Like it's dead.
Right.
Nobody prints anything. And that ended up moving to the cloud. And so all the collaboration, the notes, anything that you would have done in email or in a pad or wherever has now moved to the cloud. And you see that with Procore, Autodesk Build. You see this project management model. And a lot of people asked me, and I thought that was interesting. So we always talk about digital transformation, design from paper to eventually, 2D, then 3D, and then collaboration in the cloud from, Post-it notes and markups to digitized cloud collaboration. And they always ask me, what about ERP? Like, wasn't there a digital transformation that happened that was caused by ERP? And, short answer is no. Accounting systems have been around since the 60s, since the Wayne computer. I think that was the biggest question people. So did we digitize the general ledger when we went from handwritten general ledgers to a digitized general ledger? And the short answer is no. And the reason why that is because we've augmented, and we all know this is a dirty secret of the office of the CFO. We augmented all of those accounting systems with Excel, and manual workflows, and broken plays between departments. And so that's really, when people are asking me, like, where is this wave of AI, digital transformation? Why are you talking about the money workflow? Why is it about the office of the CFO? It's because that office of the CFO has not been transformed.
Right.
It is being using 30, 40-year-old accounting software, and really is being stuck in the middle.
Sure.
you can sing the song. It's like nobody knows what to do. It's
Right.
like all of like estimates to budgets and change orders to billings, like all of that is a broken play at most companies. So I think what this year, 2024, is all about is taking the promise of all the technology we've been talking about for the last 5 years and then boiling it into a new way of running your business.
Yeah, 100%. And that's really what the future of work is about, right? And like in particular, how does it affect the office of the CFO? Because to your point, you know, look, you've got this ERP, and yeah, it might be a dinosaur or a file. It might be old,
but it does.
It has debits and credits. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's really what it's meant to do.
Yep.
Yet to your point, there's all these things that happen around it, right? You know, Excel, and really what's happening is like, it's just, how sustainable is that? I mean, you're working too hard. Right. These are things that, you know, all of these things that you could do. It's just how much time up does that take to actually do that?
You know, another question that we were getting was like, what accounting system should we use to run Briq? That's another question. It's like, what accounting system to use the generative automation future? Should we upgrade our accounting system? And I'll tell you, it's interesting. One of our largest growth segments right now in construction in our market is integrations with Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct's a good accounting system. It's brand new-ish compared to like the other solutions out there. Yeah. But the end result is they still have to use generative AI. They still have to use Briq for forecasting and running their plays. So whether they're running Sage 300 or Sage Intacct, they still need Briq. There is no answer that's going to be found in an accounting system. I just need to be very, very clear on that. Yeah. Your debits and credit system is not your workflow system. And that's just really.
Yeah. So, you know, you think about the future of work, you've seen innovation, digital transformation, and a lot of workflows in construction. Well, you know, let's say business process, like design for example, we've seen it. And that was with the introduction of the computer.
Yeah.
Somebody then figured out, hey, I can hook up these computers and have this thing called the internet.
Yeah.
And then you saw, you know, project management, cloud-based software.
Yep.
We haven't seen it in the ERP, but it's coming.
Yeah.
So how would you describe what this new wave of digital transformation is for that money workflow?
Well, I will say that let me just talk about the maturity cycle. For those that don't live and breathe software every day, there's this idea that you go from a brand new market, just think of it like a bell curve, brand new market to very, very leveled, you know, innovation, and then innovation stops. So it's the innovation bell curve. And I think we're at the end of innovation for the cloud. I really do. Without AI, the cloud is just a bunch of computers together. I think people have realized that. We're at the point of diminishing return on cloud software. Like everybody has a timekeeping tool. Everybody has cloud software, cloud project management. You can take your accounting system and throw it into the cloud. And what's the difference? You know, like we're at the end of innovation for the cloud. And so when we're talking about what else can the cloud do, it's using that compute power to run automations, using that compute power to run predictive analytics. So now we're in that next phase.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hear this word AI.
Sure.
It is a big part of the future of work. What is AI?
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, I always say this, AI is like saying car, you know, there's sports cars and there's trucks and but it doesn't, you know, AI is just a term. First of all, it's a very dangerous term because where we are in the life cycle really isn't artificial intelligence yet. We're teaching machines to think like a human, but they're not like really heavily independently thinking. And I think a lot of that FUD out there is, you know, what scares people and also makes it a bubble sometimes, right? So let's get real with AI. Like I want to get real with AI. There's 3 types of AI. There's generative, you know, chat GPT style AI that paraphrases knowledge it's scraped from the internet to provide human-like answers in a novel way. Fancy way of saying it writes things for you. Right. You ask it, hey, can you write me a post for Airbnb to post my house? 5 minutes later, you're posted on Airbnb, which used to take a long time.
Sure.
And it's grammatically correct and it's generally accurate. And it's getting better.
It can also write formulas for you in Excel. I mean, we've heard write code.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's taking something that exists and making a novel version of it in text. And that's the generative. That's the one people know. And then for us, what we are is generative automation. So when you talk about generative automation, it's taking workflows and in some cases, fully removing the human in the loop and only asking the human, hey, do you have approval for this invoice? Do you know which cost code should it be? That's what we call autopilot. That is the idea that 80 to 90% of some workflows do not need humans in the loop. And quite frankly, a lot of those workflows were run, I go way back in this industry. That's why I'm wearing big glasses. I go way back in this industry. If you could think back, not many people know this guy, but Ross Perot ran for president.
Sure. Everybody knows Ross Perot. Sure. Yeah.
I asked a couple of people.
SNL.
People.
Sure. Yeah.
Exactly. All these young people. So he also owned a company called EDS.
Right.
And that was like a service bureau company where they would have hundreds of accountants in rooms running the accounting department for construction companies.
Yes.
And
just like huge back office stuff.
Yeah, huge back office.
Yeah.
And you needed to throw bodies at things. And when salaries were really cheap, you did that.
Sure.
Salaries aren't cheap anymore. You can't get a temp for less than 80 grand a year in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So you can't throw bodies at these workflows. Accounts payable, invoices, like that's a sunset job. Like if you're an AP, that is a sunset job. You're probably, the next generation is not going to have an AP professional really doing that work. Like it's hard to say, but it's true.
Yeah.
There are jobs.
It's hard to hire people to do this stuff.
Yeah. They don't want it anyway, like payroll. And it's just 80, 90% of some of these workflows are just going to interact with the knowledge worker that knows what cost code an invoice needs to move to.
Yeah.
Right. But there are other workflows that will never be replaced by a human. That's where we get very careful on this. Generative automation, some of it is full replacement.
Right.
And only asking the human what cost code should it go to, for instance.
Yeah.
But what we call co-pilot is generative automation where the human needs to be in the loop. Forecasting, construction project forecasting will never be fully automated.
Yes.
It needs humans. Yes, we can prompt you. We can coach you.
Right.
We can be your guardian angel on your shoulder saying,
yeah.
hey, you know what? You're not burning enough general conditions on this job. You're going to be late. Do you want to move out your end date? That's co-pilot.
Right.
And so when you look at that world for AI, generative automation for construction, luckily Briq is first and only to market on this. That's another part of artificial intelligence. There is lots of other great companies out there, UiPath, Automation Anywhere. They're doing things for horizontal industries or focusing on manufacturing. Or we're the only crazy ones that are doing it.
Yes.
And then there's that final idea, predictive analytics.
Right.
This is the holy grail. This is where somebody goes, this is the path you're going. This is going to take too long. And we're getting there. I mean, Briq is early. We've had to create our own language because, just to talk about predictive analytics, to predict something, there needs to be a normalized language.
Yes.
A standard vernacular. Unfortunately, accounting ease and project management ease and estimating ease are all different languages. And Briq has had to create that universal translator. And that's been the bane of our existence since we started. We call it the Briq graph. But ultimately, what predictive analytics around AI is how to be smarter from the data that you had behind you to make better decisions tomorrow.
100%. Yeah. AI is actually, it's a misnomer, right?
Yeah.
It's not really intelligent. I think a better way that I like to describe is automated learning.
Yeah.
You're just automating you're teaching, we call it a bot.
Yeah.
We actually have a customer that names their bot. They call it Bob. So it humanizes it a little bit.
Yeah.
Bob the bot. And what you're doing is you're teaching this bot how to do these workflows, right?
Yeah.
And especially to your point, the autopilot stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, 80%, like what's an example of an autopilot workflow that can be 80, 90% automated?
I'll tell you, we have a couple of great discussions that, we were talking to a prospect and we have an autopilot called People Autopilot where, there's a lot of field hiring happening right now. Onboarding an employee is like an act of Congress at some companies.
Sure.
So you're hiring somebody, you don't have enough workers out there. So you're taking whoever you got.
Right.
You got to do E-Verify. You got to type that into your accounting system. You got to type that into your productivity or time card system. Mm-hmm. Then you got to put in a time card for that person. Mm-hmm. The velocity of, Ellis showing up at the trailer and me shaking your hand, giving you maybe an iPad or a piece of paper to fill out your form to employee entered into the accounting system and available for time, costs, and billings in some companies are 45 days.
Wow.
There's a lot of time that is disappearing on those jobs that aren't getting billed.
Yeah.
So why is it so long? Why does it take so long? How come we haven't fixed this? Whether you have a digital form in, let's say, a cloud-based system like Procore or Autodesk, it still just dumps into a PDF that dumps into somebody's inbox.
Yeah.
What you really need is that digital form, whether it's Briq's or anybody else's, to dump into the bot's inbox and let the bot just handle everything because they work 24/7 and there's hundreds of them.
Yes. And they're very scalable.
Yeah.
So autopilot, part of this AI world, again, AI is maybe not the right word, automated learning.
Sure.
The bot is a big piece of this.
Yeah.
What is a bot?
A bot's a little computer program that mimics the behavior of a human in certain business processes.
Right.
And that bot, what makes it learning is that bot gets better at their job over time. So I'll give you a good example.
Yeah.
When an estimate is finished, the estimators have estimated in a different level of detail than we manage costs. So the estimators have estimating codes, and project managers and accountants have cost codes.
Right.
They're different. So 03300 is concrete. It consolidates all of the individual pieces of the estimate into 03300. The moment that you take an estimate and you send it to a PM and you say, enter this into Procore or Autodesk Build as a budget, and the moment you send that to the accounting or job cost department and say, enter that into Foundation or CMIC or Viewpoint or Sage as a budget, you've broken, I will say this is the worst relay team in the world.
Right.
The budgets are all different. No, the cost codes are all different.
Right.
Timesheets are all screwed up.
There's a lot of rework as a result.
All of this.
Yeah.
Nonsense. So the idea here is like, when you really think about what does that really mean? It means that learning, what does it really mean? It means that the bot is going to do the work.
Yeah.
This is not make believe. We have hundreds of clients doing this.
Yeah.
We automated 144,000 project management transactions last month.
Well, that's another great example of a mindless, repetitive task, right?
But when the bot looks at estimating codes, at first they're going to be about 60% accurate based on what we taught it.
Right.
So they're going to say, oh, these 17 codes should go into 03300. They're going to miss 5 or 6. Somebody needs to monitor that. Briq has something called Briq Assist. We announced it, where we help monitor it and help the machine learning. Our clients also do. You're teaching it in the first month what they missed.
Right.
And then you're teaching it again and again. And by month 6, they're 95% accurate. And that's
crazy.
About it.
That's the automated learning piece.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a couple polls out there for folks here, and feel free to throw in some questions. I got a couple things in the chat here. Oh, Bassem's mic isn't working. Oh, you can hear loud and clear now. Okay, thank you. You're good now.
Oh, great. It was too far away.
Yeah. So listen, I think automation is something that I'm going to launch this poll here. Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 5, how automated would you say the business is? Right. And I think, look, you think about these autopilot workflows, 90%, 80% is automated with a bot, 10% done with a human.
Right.
This is a big part of the future of work. The other bucket you mentioned is co-pilot.
Yeah.
Where it is much more around the decision-making that a human needs to make some decision. What are some examples of a co-pilot? You mentioned forecasting.
Yeah, I'll talk about project forecasting. And this is a very typical process. Give you an example of one of our clients before Briq. They would have the project manager log into Sage, download a cost report, or they'd have the CFO download the cost report and email it to the project manager. This should sound familiar to many if we have CFOs or project managers on the call.
Right.
Then they would go in and cut and paste data into an Excel spreadsheet that they then had a bunch of formulas, and then they would do the work.
Yeah.
And by the time they've done all this nonsense to build the landing page of their forecast, they don't know what their project health is.
Right.
They have no idea because they're not doing any of the knowledge work. And, with the brain trust at this particular client, which I love, tells that, they're honest, like know thyself is the first thing. They said, we were dumb enough to believe that a project health dashboard, A, could ever happen, and B, would be the answer of it. The dashboard is at the end of the process.
Yeah.
The play is broken. The dashboard is just a scorecard of a broken play, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So when you talk about Copilot, it's getting away from the manual work before you make the decision.
Interesting. Right. Yeah. It's that idea of that 50% that can be automated is basically the grunt work. It's the pulling down the report. It's the copying and pasting.
Right.
It's even the emailing stuff out to people.
Exactly.
And then
reminders
are holding them accountable for getting that back to you.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Think about how much time. I mean, if you're, there's a great customer of ours that, refers to it as they're in hunter-gatherer mode.
Yeah, exactly.
80% of their time.
Yeah, and that's what construction is. It's like we're still, in some cases, still in the Stone Age,
right?
Even though it's a very advanced industry. The idea, though, that you're hunting and gathering doesn't mean you can't eat. Yeah. And that's at the end, the wrong things are prioritized in construction and project forecasting. What I need from you, the project manager, is what is the outcome going to be?
Yeah.
That's what I need. I don't need you to be an Excel scientist. One PM came to me and said, thank you for relieving me from my second job as the CFO of my project.
Yeah.
Because I had 15 minutes of training in construction management school and how to run finance.
Yeah.
They don't want to build large financial models in Excel to manage projects. And we've removed that from them. But the other side of Copilot, that's just the easy stuff. That's the creating of a pseudo Excel spreadsheet. The harder stuff is when you start making mistakes.
Yes.
And that's when Copilot is monitoring and saying, hey, you know what? You say you're on budget. There is no way you're on budget. And I'll give a couple examples. We had a client who's running a program for a very large tech startup, and 6-month projects, infrastructure style projects. They were going in there, they're building these little mini data centers. They weren't burning off general conditions fast enough. They did not have enough humans doing the work in the first 2 months. It was mathematically impossible to catch up. But because they were under budget, nobody looked at it until it was too late and penalties started incurring.
100%.
And so those are the types of things that get caught with a assistant.
Yeah, we hear all the time, look, there's a great general contractor in Texas. I've got the first 30% to catch a mistake and to fix it. After that, I'm working from behind.
Yeah, 100%.
So the other thing, a great thing about Copilot too is, you mentioned predictive analytics. That's where I think there's a lot of, again, talking about the future of work.
Yeah, sure.
How do I coach? How do I use my, my information, my data to help create a better decision from a project manager, for example?
Yeah. So here's a good example. Let's say you've been running your accounting system for 30 years, which you probably have been. There's enough data in there from project closeouts. If you have rich data on the project side, at least the project, the customer or the location, the delivery method, getting that information taught into the system, Briq can consume the accounting data and create these curves for you. Just very simple regression analysis. It's not fancy AI. It's just like math on steroids. Yeah, and exactly. And so it's the spend curve for general conditions, spend curve for revenue, spend curve for whatever. Yeah. When that is done on day one in Briq, you get this instant coaching moment. It's not that great, but it's the start where we're going to go in and say, hey, we call it time travel. We can pull you future and pull you back. Where should you have been against a baseline? Where are you going against that baseline? And when you think about the difference between running with that information and not running with that information, the people that use time travel on forecasts can never imagine a world without it.
Yeah. It's a data point too. That's the thing about prediction. It's, it's very difficult to predict a final cost of completion.
100%.
Because there's just so many elements involved in putting a project together, right?
Exactly.
Now, what you can do is have a data point that says, hey, based on projects like this with duration, here's typically where you've fallen.
Right. Exactly.
Just it's a Copilot, if you will, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of our clients compares what the project manager's spread is month on month. Yeah. To what the original budget spread was month on month to what the Briq says month on month. And then they show the delta to the project manager and there's like, are you sure?
Interesting.
And that's are you sure moment goes, well, you know what, maybe. But you know what's powerful about releasing you from all the crappy work you don't want to do?
Can I guess?
Yeah, it's like you can actually go ahead.
Tell me.
It's the knowledge.
The knowledge.
It's like you just do the knowledge work. It makes your job more human.
Well, I was going to say the evolution of this is, so what do you do with the time back, right? And I think that to me is, I think about, okay,
a lot of people are drinking.
What's the return? Drinking, yeah. Spend more time, I don't know, preparing green bean casserole for next week. Because what's interesting about this, I got an interesting question from a CFO. He's like, okay, you're going to automate all this stuff for me. No, and if I find out that, we're 60% of general conditions, 30% of budget or project schedule, what do I do next? It's like, well, that's a great question. So part of the future of work is, how do you then take this information and actually help it build an ROI?
Oh yeah. So that, we're talking about the innovation curve,
right?
We're at the beginning of, when you were at the beginning of cloud and you started seeing Procore using iPads or iPhones, it's like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah. And then we get all the way to here and it's like commonplace, right?
Right.
We're just at the beginning of this AI digitization revolution. We're at the beginning of it. We're just teaching people that a machine can do crappy accounting work. Like that's like,
like the table stakes.
We're at table stakes, right?
Yeah.
And so the next generation, that's why I say this is so exciting time, because 2024 is going to be, now you got all this done. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
what do I do with all that extra time? Is run a better business.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means make better decisions, right person, right place, right time, be more profitable, and then do this amazing thing, which is enhance fee. Stop chasing fee erosion and start chasing fee enhancement.
Yeah.
And when you get there, which will be, you know, part of this digital transformation, when we get to that top of that curve where people prove they're not just saving money on time, they're not just planning better, they're not just stopping fee erosion, they're at the holy grail of, I know how to make more money on a project because of automation and because of predictive and because of AI. That's what,
and because
that's will be the top of the mountain.
And by the way, also too, in this future of work, well, the roles will change, right? I mean, we're not getting rid of people in this.
That's on
the role of the CFO, the role of the controller, even in operations. I mean, the strategies of the business might change based on this as well.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we don't hire blacksmiths anymore either, right? Like there are moments where you have to realize that we call it the future of work. Is it scary? Yeah, your job's going to change. That's it.
Yeah,
it will change eventually. And, you know, are you going to have as many project accounts? That's a big question. Probably not.
Yeah.
Are you going to have the concept of a cost engineer? Probably you can have one cost engineer, like for larger GCs, they have something called cost engineer that helps forecast. You may have one cost engineer for every 10 projects versus 1-to-1.
Yeah.
But then also fundamentally jobs will change. Jobs that are usually occupied to do this manual work probably won't exist anymore, but there'll be different types of jobs.
Yeah.
And I think that's
it's exciting. I think we should all be, you know, I think we should embrace that.
Yeah.
You know, we have, you mentioned, you know, almost 400 customers doing this,
Yeah.
running automation. This is not, you know, what are some of the, we'll do a time check here. I got a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
What are some of the stories we hear of success here? Like, what are some of the things that people are doing well?
I think that, you know, first of all, the best stories I hear is where they say, we can't drop Briq. I mean, that's the best stories. We have this huge general contractor, and I should say some of our best clients are subcontractors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Subs. So I'll tell you both stories, but huge subcontractor that has this owner mandated, all of their programs, they work for Google, Facebook, all owner mandated PM systems that they had to have somebody park at a machine and type all the shit they had in their Procore into the other program. Those bots just run and run and run. And not, you know, they're all of a sudden everything's sequenced. So that's a great success story.
Yeah.
But when I talk about subcontractors who have been consistently ignored, half of our client base is subs. Labor forecasting, doing 6-week look aheads that actually mean something, that roll up into a corporate headcount forecast, that roll into their opportunity forecast, that rolls into a potential hiring plan. That's like everything is connected. Those are really cool stories.
Yeah. That's fun to see. And also it takes, you know, like everyone starts small, right? It's all like, let me just save some overhead costs, right? Then you start getting that ability to plan better, right? To see mistakes before they happen.
90%, Ellis, of the people that come in are like, our AP clerk retired.
Right.
We have an opening for an AP person. I heard about this on a podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
Can we, you know, look at it? And then they're like, oh, I didn't replace one headcount. And then we're very insidious. Like we go right in there.
Or somebody retires, right? It's like, okay, I went from 2 to 1, you know, and like, do I hire somebody? I can't find somebody. I got to do it fast. And so like, I agree. Like the spend side of the business, whether it's invoices or credit cards, those things are just great low hanging fruit to start with.
Especially when construction companies are competing with work from home, which a lot of construction companies don't like to have.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I just launched another poll. How automated is the invoicing and purchase order workflow?
Yeah.
So we've, you know, future of work. This is, if you have not gone and seen the series and watched it, highly recommend going back. This is, we delve into 7 workflows specifically: project initiation, estimate to budget, cost to complete, revenue forecasting, cash flow, spend management, billings for receivables. How do you think about these workflows? How do you bring automation into the business to adopt it? What, you know, quick highlight as folks kind of formulate some questions here. I see some coming in.
I think it's always crawl, walk, run.
Yeah.
You know,
what's the advice?
I always say start small.
You're right.
Project like if you're going to start with WIP, like a WIP to project forecast, you know, you're always going to look at your WIP, which is the consolidation of forecasts. Then you're going to go out to the field and ask project managers to use Briq workbooks instead of Excel.
Yeah.
And then they're going to get like really fall in love with the coaching that they get. Right.
Yeah.
So that's going to take a lot longer from a return on investment perspective, because you have dozens of people sometimes involved in project forecasts. So that's a really good project, but just be prepared for it to be a longer rollout. Whereas some folks will come in and just say, I want my AR automated, or I want my AP automated, or I want some of my human capital plans automated.
Mhm.
That's why we broke up the product between Autopilot, which is pretty hands-off from an implementation perspective,
Sure, yeah.
to Copilot, which has a lot more impact on the business.
Right.
It is, you're going to get there. And again, clients make their own decisions.
Yeah.
My recommendation is always start with like basic automations that save you time across the organization, that allows the relay to happen cleaner, and then focus on the next step and then the next. It's like, what's next? And then what's next?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, I got a good question here.
Sure.
From Mr. Ben Black. Construction projects may have consistent cost distribution from project to project in Division 1, but how does predictive analytics account for the project to project variation in other scopes of work, which can be dramatic?
Yeah. Couple of things. Part of those features, so we always hear that.
Yeah.
You do have to focus on how good we are at cost collection. I'm assuming you're a GC.
Yeah, there were the examples are like between a 10-acre estate and a 5,000 square foot house.
Yeah.
And a 5,000 square foot house and a TI build out.
Right. So for those are easier to answer. So I'll kind of build up the answer. The project itself has something called features, which is the size of the project, square footage, location, delivery method, TI versus, round up construction of a home. That provides a lot of impact because the curves are broken up by that. So you can't have one universal curve. That does not work. Right. It has to be done by like size of project, duration of project,
contract type,
is it GMAX, is it lump sum? And then ultimately percentage of self-performed work. There's a lot of features that go into that.
Right.
So that's the one thing. That's how you break up those curves. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
But the other thing that is challenging with predictive analytics for a GC, less so for a subcontractor, is that we don't collect subcontractor costs very accurately right now. The 702, 703 received from a subcontractor isn't used as strongly as like a timesheet. It's not as, fundamentally clear. Those requests for payments from subs for a GC are harder to understand. And so that creates an issue at the individual scope of work line items. The last thing, so that you have to account for that. But the last thing I'm going to say is, I talk about Andy Reid. I'm not a Chiefs fan at all, but Andy Reid did not walk into the Super Bowl without a playbook.
Right.
And you know what? Every football game's different too. Yeah. Right. So like it's not like you can't go in there and say, well, every game is different, so forget the plays.
Right.
You need to have standardized plays, and sometimes the plays are broken. Right. A play is broken. You have to improvise and you deal with that. But I'd rather have a play and a playbook than not. And that's what Briq provides.
Yeah. Interesting. Another question here is, any advice on implementation of Briq with generations that might not be accustomed or comfortable with AI?
Oh yeah. That's a common one. It's we're an aging industry. I'm going to tell you that. I'm still the young guy.
By the way, it's okay. I think like that's okay to be, for folks to be,
it's not,
like it's not.
I think it's the same thing that we faced, they used to say, oh, superintendent's never going to use an iPad. I remember that line. Yeah. When I joined Procore, I was like, oh, the superintendent's never going to use. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, well, now you can't. It's because everybody has these in their phone in their hand now, right? It's impossible not to.
And so some of the biggest advocates of Procore are 70-year-old superintendents.
Yeah.
It's not about the technology. It's about the value you get from the technology.
Yeah.
And when the technology provides value, you can't take it away.
Right.
That's the key. And for, not being comfortable, there's trust, right? We're Kansas City, we're show me state, right? It's like construction, show me. That's why you do the crawl walk.
It's Missouri. I don't know.
Oh, is it Missouri? I'm Canadian.
There's a Kansas City, Missouri. So maybe that.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
No, but you're right, 100%. It's like, look, I think the technology, the technology is the means. It's the why.
Yeah.
That you answer.
Yeah. You don't buy Briq because, it's cool.
Right.
You buy Briq because you don't want to sit at night doing forecasts that are 60 days old and then losing money on a project 2 months after you closed it out. Like that's what you want to
do. Yeah. When I go and buy a car or an iPhone, I'm not asking, how the circuit board or the engine works.
You just want it to work.
I just want to get from place A to place B.
Yeah. And like, here's an example, my father will never use auto drive in Tesla.
Right.
Like he's 82 years old. He doesn't trust it.
Right.
Even though he probably should You got it right. But the bottom line is, when somebody does that had doubt and it works perfectly and it helps them, they'll do it all the time. And that's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look, and I think, if you answering the why, that is not always an easy task either, right? Even if you're on board with the technology. So, listen, we work with a lot of, prospects looking at Briq, like, hey, how do I prepare me to prepare my team for this change and really put this in terms of business context as well.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up here. Bassem, I know you're Canadian. You just admitted it. But
I became a U.S. citizen last year.
I had, it's right. So you are American. So that means you're required to practice Thanksgiving. I'm going to ask, what kind of beans go in your Thanksgiving green bean casserole? Are we doing canned? Are we doing fresh, or are we just not eating green beans at all?
We're just not eating any beans. Ground beef.
Ground beef.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds. I don't know. I missed that tradition. Just in the pan. Well, look, we want to thank everybody for joining us. By the way, I'm going on the hashtag Can the Can campaign. I want to seek fresh green beans and all your green bean casseroles next week, please. But listen, I really appreciate everyone's time today. Again, check out the Future Work series. And if you have any questions or follow-ups for Bassem or myself, please reach out. Again, thank you everyone for attending. Have a great and safe week with your family and friends at Thanksgiving. And we'll see you on the next webinar.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Oh, the book thing.
Oh, yeah. One more thing. Amanda, who is here in the background, there is a great book called The Adaptation Advantage. And if you're interested in learning how to implement some of these digital transformations, there's some really good tactical steps that are recommended. And we've been recommending this book. And so Amanda just dropped it in the chat for us. It's called The Adaptation Advantage. We'll send you a copy if you'd like. So just click on it and we'll send it in the follow-up.
This is our Oprah moment. You get
the Oprah moment. You all get Adaptation Advantage. That's good. Yeah. And you want to play us out on the music real quick?
All right.
Boom. Thanks everybody for attending. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great Thanksgiving. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.